In the gilded heart of the celestial spire, a palace carved from living moonstone that shimmered with the breath of ancient stars, stood a human guard named Joran Vale. He was not a warrior of legend, nor a diplomat draped in silks, but a quiet man of discipline who had signed up for off-world security detail after Earth's last war left him with too many ghosts and too few reasons to stay. His uniform was crisp, his boots polished, and his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes, gray as storm clouds over forgotten oceans, betrayed a mind that noticed everything. He'd been stationed at the royal palace of Queen Lysara Vey for 6 months, tasked with guarding the Hall of Echoing Vows, a ceremonial chamber where treaties were signed and destinies whispered into the air like incense smoke. It was boring work, mostly, until the day she appeared. Queen Lysara was unlike any being Joran had ever seen. Her skin glowed with the soft luminescence of fresh snow under twin moons, and her hair, long and impossibly white, flowed like liquid starlight down her back. She moved with the grace of a solar flare contained in silk, deliberate, radiant, and dangerous. Her people, the Veyari, were humanoid but ethereal, their bones lighter than humans, their voices layered with harmonic undertones that could soothe or shatter depending on intent. And Lysara? She was their sovereign. Their last hope after a brutal civil war had nearly erased their civilization. Now, peace teetered on the edge of a blade, and every gesture she made was scrutinized by allies and enemies alike. Joran had never spoken to her directly. Protocol forbade it. Guards did not address queens unless addressed first. But he'd watched her from the shadows more times than he cared to admit. How she'd pause before the ancestral murals, fingertips brushing the faces of fallen kings. How she'd sip moonbloom tea alone at dawn, her shoulders slumping just slightly when she thought no one was looking. He'd even caught her once humming an old lullaby in the garden, her voice trembling with something that sounded suspiciously like loneliness. He told himself it meant nothing. He was a guard. She was a queen. The universe didn't write love stories for men like him. Then came the Feast of Twin Suns. The palace thrummed with music, alien dignitaries in iridescent robes, and floating lanterns that pulsed with bioluminescent joy. Joran stood near the eastern archway, scanning the crowd for threats, when Lysara swept past him. Not in her usual regal procession, but alone, her eyes fixed on him with unnerving intensity. She stopped inches away, close enough that he caught the scent of frost blossom and ozone clinging to her skin. "You've been watching me," she said, not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. Joran stiffened. "Your Majesty, I watch everyone. It's my duty." A ghost of a smile played on her lips. Duty. How very human. She turned slightly, gesturing toward a pedestal at the center of the hall. Upon it rested a box, small, obsidian black, veined with silver threads that pulsed faintly, like a sleeping heartbeat. "Do you know what that is?" "No, Your Majesty. It's the casket of Vaethul," she said softly. "Forged during the First Concord, it contains a single truth, the name of the one soul destined to stand beside me as consort. Not by bloodline, not by alliance, but by fate." Joran blinked. "And, you're telling me this why?" Lysara turned fully to face him now, her white eyes gleaming with something between challenge and vulnerability. "Because I'm tired of politics. Tired of suitors who want my throne, not me. So I've issued a decree." She raised her voice just enough for nearby courtiers to hear. "To any being present tonight, human, Veyari, or otherwise, if you open this box and speak the name within, I shall marry you." A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread through the hall. Several noble-born Veyari stepped forward eagerly, hands outstretched. But the moment their fingers neared the box, arcs of violet energy crackled from its surface, sending them stumbling back with cries of pain. "It only opens for the worthy," Lysara said, her gaze returning to Joran. "Or the foolish." He should have walked away, should have muttered an excuse and returned to his post. But something in her eyes, something raw and real beneath the crown, made him hesitate. And then, against every shred of logic, he stepped forward. The court fell silent. Joran approached the pedestal slowly, heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't brave. He was just curious, and maybe, just maybe, tired of being invisible. He reached out. No lightning struck him. No alarms blared. His fingers closed around the cool surface of the box, and it opened with a sigh, as if it had been waiting for him all along. Inside lay no scroll, no gem, no name etched in light. Just a single sentence, glowing in shifting glyphs that somehow translated directly into his mind. "You already knew her name." Joran looked up, stunned. Lysara stood before him, breathless. Her composure finally cracked. "Well?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Do you accept my challenge?" He should have laughed. Should have said it was a trick, a test, a joke. But the truth pressed against his chest like a second heartbeat. "I didn't come here looking for a queen," he said quietly. "But I think I've been guarding more than just a hallway." She smiled then. A real smile, warm and unguarded. "Then guard my heart instead." The court erupted. Some cheered. Others hissed. A faction of traditionalist nobles, led by High Minister Zoran, stormed out in protest, vowing to contest the union. But Lysara didn't flinch. She took Joran's hand, calloused and human, and raised it high. "Let it be known," she declared, "that the will of the casket is law. Joran Vale, human of earth, shall be my consort." What followed was neither smooth nor simple. The next weeks were a whirlwind of protocol lessons, language tutors, and endless fittings for ceremonial robes that made Joran feel like a misplaced statue. He fumbled through court etiquette, accidentally insulted a visiting ambassador by offering a handshake instead of a resonance bow, and once tripped over his own sash during a state procession, earning both laughter and reluctant admiration. "At least he's honest," someone muttered. "Not like those perfumed snakes." But beneath the chaos, something tender grew. Lysara began seeking him out, not as her consort in waiting, but as Joran. She joined him on night patrols, wrapped in a simple cloak, asking about Earth's oceans and forests, things she'd only read about in archives. He told her stories of rain, of dogs, of pizza so greasy it stained your fingers for hours. She listened with rapt attention, her white hair catching the moonlight, her laughter like wind chimes in a quiet room. One evening, as they sat on the sky balcony overlooking the crystalline city below, she asked, "Why did you open the box?" He hesitated. "Because I thought you looked sad, even surrounded by all this." He gestured to the palace, the lights, the grandeur. "And I wanted to see if you'd smile." She did. Then, softly, "I've been alone since I was 12. My parents were assassinated. My brother vanished in the war. Everyone who comes near me wants something. Power, legacy, security." She turned to him, eyes luminous. "But you just stood there, watching, not asking, not taking." "I'm still just a guard," he said. "You're the first person in 20 years who saw me," she replied. "Not the crown." Their bond deepened, but danger brewed in the shadows. Zoran and his faction weren't content to let a human, a mortal, they sneered, sit beside their immortal queen. Rumors spread that Joran was a spy, that the casket had been tampered with, that Lysara had lost her mind. Then came the assassination attempt. It happened during the ceremony of binding, a pre-wedding ritual where the couple would exchange blood sigils. As Joran knelt before Lysara, dagger in hand to draw the ceremonial drop, a hidden sniper fired from the upper gallery. The bolt, a needle-thin projectile laced with neural toxin, was meant for her heart. But Joran, trained to react before thinking, threw himself in front of her. The pain was instant, searing. He collapsed, vision swimming, as chaos erupted. Lysara's scream cut through the noise like shattered glass. She cradled him, her hands glowing with healing energy, but the toxin was designed to resist Vayari magic. "Hold on," she begged, tears streaking her pale cheeks. "Please, Joran, don't leave me." He tried to speak, to tell her it was okay, but darkness swallowed him whole. When he awoke, he was in the royal infirmary, tubes snaking from his arms, the sterile scent of med bloom filling his nose. Lysara sat beside him, exhausted but alert, her hand clasped tightly around his. "You idiot," she whispered, half laughing, half crying. "You could have died." "Worth it," he croaked. She squeezed his hand. "No more heroics. Promise me." "I can't promise that," he said, managing a weak grin. "I'm your guard, remember?" She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. "You're more than that. You always were." Recovery was slow, but Joran's stubbornness proved stronger than the toxin. As he healed, so did their resolve. Together, they uncovered Zoran's plot. He'd allied with a rival faction from the outer colonies, planning to seize the throne during the wedding chaos. With evidence gathered by Joran's sharp eyes and Lysara's network of loyal spies, they exposed the conspiracy in a dramatic session of the High Conclave. Zoran was exiled, his allies stripped of titles, and peace, fragile but real, returned to the spire. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, twin suns casting golden light over the palace gardens. Joran wore a hybrid uniform, Earth-style jacket with Veari embroidery, his insignia subtly woven into the cuffs. Lysara glowed in a gown of woven starlight, her white hair braided with living vines that bloomed as she walked. They exchanged vows not in the grand hall, but in the quiet courtyard where they'd first truly talked, surrounded only by those who mattered. Afterward, during the feast, a tipsy ambassador clapped Joran on the back and said, "So human. Did you really believe that box would choose you?" Joran looked across the table at Lysara, who winked at him over her goblet of moon wine. "I didn't believe in fate," he admitted, "but I believed in her." And that, as it turned out, was enough. In the months that followed, Joran didn't become a king. He became something better, a partner. He advised on security reforms, introduced Earth-style community programs to bridge cultural gaps, and even started a small garden on the palace roof, just tomatoes and basil, but Lysara treated each sprout like a miracle. She, in turn, softened the rigid edges of Veari tradition, opening diplomatic channels with previously shunned species, all while leaning on Joran's grounded perspective. One night, as they lay tangled in silken sheets, she traced the scar on his chest, the mark left by the assassin's bolt. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Coming here? Staying?" He kissed her forehead. "Regret? I get to wake up next to the most beautiful, terrifying, brilliant woman in 3 galaxies. And you feed me those weird fruit pastries I pretend to hate but actually love." He paused. "Besides, who else would put up with my snoring?" She laughed, the sound warm and alive. "Only you would turn destiny into a joke." "But it's our joke," he said. And in that moment, with the stars watching through the open balcony and the future stretching before them like an unwritten scroll, Joran Vale, the human guard who opened a box, knew he'd found not just a queen, but a home. Life in the celestial spire settled into a rhythm as gentle as the pulse of the moonstone walls. Yet beneath that calm, currents stirred. Joran and Lysara's union had brought hope to many, but resentment festered in others. The outer colonies, long neglected during the Civil War, now saw a human, a mortal, at the queen's side and whispered that the Veari soul was being diluted. Worse still, rumors spread that Lysara had grown soft, distracted by love, and no longer fit to rule with the cold clarity their people demanded. Then came the child. It began with Lysara missing a ceremonial fast, a sacred rite where the queen communed with ancestral spirits through 3 days of silence and fasting. When she failed to appear, panic rippled through the court. Joran found her in the private observatory, pale and trembling, clutching a small diagnostic orb that glowed with soft blue light. "Joran," she whispered, eyes wide with disbelief and something deeper, fear. "I'm with child." He stared at her, heart hammering. "But, Veari and humans, I thought it was impossible." "The casket didn't just choose you for companionship," she said, voice shaking. "It knew. Our bloodlines. They're compatible, rarely, but possible." She looked down at her hands. "No Veari queen has borne a hybrid child in over 10,000 cycles. The texts say such offspring are either miracles or omens." The news ignited the palace like plasma fire. Traditionalists declared the unborn child an abomination. Reformers hailed it as the dawn of a new era. And deep in the shadowed vaults of the spire, someone activated an old protocol, one buried since the First Concord, the Purification Edict, which allowed the High Conclave to remove a monarch deemed unfit due to biological instability. Joran refused to let fear dictate their future. He doubled security, trained a new guard unit composed of both humans and loyal Veari, and even convinced Lysara to let him install Earth-style surveillance drones disguised as floating lanterns. "If they want to plot," he muttered, calibrating a lens over the throne room, "let them do it on camera." But the true threat didn't come from within the palace. It came from beyond the stars. A transmission arrived one night, encrypted in dead code dialect only Lysara recognized. It bore the sigil of the Ashen Veil, a rogue faction believed extinct after the Civil War. Their leader? None other than Lysara's long-lost brother, Prince Kalen Vey. He wasn't dead. He'd been exiled, yes, but not by enemies. By their own father, who feared Kalen's radical vision of Veari supremacy. Now, hardened by decades in the void, Kalen returned with a fleet of salvaged warships and a single demand: surrender the throne, or watch the spire burn. Worse, he knew about the child. "You've defiled our bloodline with mortal flesh." His hologram sneered during the broadcast, his face gaunt, eyes burning with fanaticism. Surrender the human and the unborn half-breed, and I'll spare your people. Refuse, and I'll reduce this palace to stardust. Lysara stood tall before the transmission, but Joran saw the tremor in her hands. That night, she confessed the truth she'd hidden even from him. Kalen hadn't just vanished. She'd helped fake his death to save him from their father's purge. I thought I was protecting him, she whispered, tears glistening like frost. Instead, I made a monster. Joran pulled her close. Then we fix it. Together. Their plan was desperate. Kalen's fleet would arrive in 7 cycles. The Spire's defenses were strong, but not enough against a surprise attack from within the asteroid belt. They needed allies, and fast. Joran proposed reaching out to the very colonies that distrusted them, offering autonomy in exchange for military support. Lysara agreed, though it meant risking her authority. But betrayal struck before diplomacy could bloom. During a secret meeting with the Sandward envoys, a desert-dwelling Veari clan known for their fierce independence, Joran noticed something off. The envoy leader, a scarred elder named Vorin, kept glancing at Lysara's abdomen. Too often. Too long. As they departed, Joran discreetly scanned their shuttle. Buried beneath diplomatic cargo, a neural disruptor, designed to induce miscarriage without leaving a trace. He confronted Vorin alone in the docking bay, using Earth interrogation tactics masked as cultural misunderstanding. Under pressure, the elder cracked. Kalen promised us sovereignty, he admitted. All we had to do was cleanse the bloodline. Joran didn't kill him. He recorded the confession and sent it to every major clan. The message was clear. Kalen would betray them all. The gambit worked. Clan after clan pledged ships to the Spire's defense. Even former skeptics rallied, ashamed of their complicity. But time was running out. On the eve of battle, Lysara insisted on standing on the command balcony, despite her growing belly and Joran's protests. I am their queen, she said firmly. They must see me unafraid. The sky darkened as Kalen's fleet emerged from the asteroid shadow. Dozens of jagged warforms, hulls scorched black, weapons humming with stolen plasma cores. The Spire's shields flared to life, shimmering like a soap bubble around the palace. The battle was chaos. Energy beams carved through the atmosphere. Fighters darted like angry insects. Joran coordinated ground defenses from the war room, barking orders in a mix of standard and broken Veari, sweat soaking his uniform. At one point, a breach opened in the eastern spire. Kalen's elite infiltrators, clad in phase cloaks, slipping through like ghosts. Joran grabbed a pulse rifle and ran. He met them in the Hall of Echoing Vows, the very place where it all began. 5 warriors, blades crackling with antimatter edges. He was outnumbered, outmatched, but he fought like a man with everything to lose. He took a slash across the ribs, another to the thigh, but held them off long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Then Kalen himself appeared, not on the battlefield but in the royal chambers. Lysara stood alone, unarmed, facing her brother in the nursery they'd quietly prepared. Mobiles of constellations hung above an empty crib. Kalen's eyes flicked to it, then back to her. You would raise a mongrel in our father's cradle? I would raise my child in love, she said steadily. Something you forgot long ago. For a heartbeat, doubt flickered in his eyes. Then rage returned. He raised his weapon, a sonic dagger capable of shattering bone without breaking skin. But before he could strike, Joran burst in, bleeding but upright, rifle aimed. Drop it. Kalen laughed bitterly. You think a human can stop me? You're a footnote in our history. No, Joran said, finger tightening on the trigger. I'm the man who loves your sister, and I'll die before I let you hurt her, or our child. Something in his voice, the raw, unshakable certainty, made Kalen hesitate. In that sliver of time, Lysara did something unexpected. She stepped forward and placed her hand on her brother's chest, right over his heart. I remember you, she whispered, before the war, before the hate. You used to carry me on your shoulders and tell me stories about the stars singing. Kalen's breath hitched. His weapon lowered slightly. Outside, the tide of battle turned. Reinforcements from the Sandward clans flanked Kalen's fleet. His flagship took critical damage. A retreat signal blared through his comm. He looked from Lysara to Joran, then to the crib. This isn't over, he growled. But there was less fire in it now, more sorrow. As his ship fled into the void, the spire erupted in cheers. But Joran and Lysara didn't celebrate. They stood in the quiet nursery, holding each other, knowing the war had merely changed shape. Weeks later, peace talks began. Kalen's fleet was crippled, but not destroyed. He retreated to the outer rim, vowing to rebuild. Yet whispers reached the spire that he'd begun questioning his path, especially after learning the child Lasara carried was showing signs of both Veari resonance and human adaptability, a trait some scholars called the bridge gene. Then came the final twist. While reviewing ancient archives for clues about hybrid physiology, Jorn stumbled upon a sealed record labeled Project Genesis. It detailed a secret alliance between early human colonists and Veari scientists centuries ago, before the Great Silence severed contact. They'd attempted cross-species integration, believing unity was the key to surviving cosmic threats. The project was abandoned, but not before several gene lines were spliced. And one of those lines traced directly to Jorn's maternal ancestry. He wasn't just randomly compatible with Lasara. His blood had been designed over generations to harmonize with hers. The casket hadn't chosen him by chance. It had recognized the echo of an ancient pact written in DNA. When he told Lasara, she sat in stunned silence for a long moment. Then she laughed. A sound of wonder, not mockery. "So we were never accidents," she said, placing a hand on her swelling belly. "We were always meant to find each other." Months passed. The child grew. The spire flourished. Joran, once a nameless guard, became Lord Protector, a title he wore with the same humility he'd worn his uniform. He still patrolled the halls sometimes, not out of duty, but because he liked the quiet. And often, he'd stop before the pedestal where the casket of Vathul once sat. It was gone now, sealed away, its purpose fulfilled. But sometimes, late at night, he'd swear he heard it whisper. Not a name, promise. And in the royal garden, under twin suns and a sky full of watching stars, Queen Lasara would call to him, her white hair glowing, her hand resting on the curve of her stomach, and smile. "Come home, Joran." And he would, every time. The child was born under a triple eclipse, a celestial alignment the Veari called the Weaving, when the 3 moons of Vera crossed paths and the sky turned violet. It was an omen, the elders said, but whether for blessing or warning depended on who you asked. Joran stood in the birthing chamber, sweat damp and trembling, gripping Lasara's hand as she pushed through waves of pain that shimmered visibly around her like heat haze, her body channeling ancestral energy to ease the passage of life. When the cry finally came, sharp, clear, and unmistakably human in pitch but layered with a harmonic resonance that made the crystal chimes in the ceiling hum in response, Joran wept openly. The midwives wrapped the newborn in silk woven from moonmoth fibers and placed her in Lasara's arms. "A daughter," Lasara whispered, tears tracing silver paths down her cheeks. "Her name is Cyril." Joran touched the baby's cheek, soft as starlight, warm as sunrise. Her skin held the faintest pearlescent sheen of her mother's lineage, but her eyes, they were gray, like his. Storm gray, with flecks of violet that pulsed gently in the dim light. Already, she clutched his finger with surprising strength. For days, the palace celebrated. Bells chimed across the city. Gardens bloomed out of season. Even the stone corridors seemed to sigh with relief. But peace, Joran had learned, was never permanent, only borrowed. 3 weeks after Cyril's birth, the first sign appeared. She wouldn't stop crying. Not from hunger, not from discomfort, but from something deeper. At night, her tiny body would tremble, and her eyes would roll back, showing only white. Then, the walls around her crib would ripple, as if reality itself bent in her presence. Once, a floating lantern shattered without being touched. Another time, every mirror in the royal wing cracked simultaneously at exactly 3:17 a.m. Lasara grew pale with dread. "It's the bridge gene," she murmured one sleepless dawn, rocking Cyril in the observatory. "It's not just compatibility, it's power. Unstable, unformed. She's sensing things, feeling rifts in spacetime we can't even perceive." Joran held them both. "Then we teach her, guide her, like any parent would." But the universe had other plans. A distress signal arrived from the outer mining colony of Xylos 9, not from Veari, but from a human research outpost Joran hadn't known existed. The message was fragmented, glitching, but one phrase repeated like a heartbeat. "They're using the child's frequency." Joran's blood ran cold. He cross-referenced the signal with old Earth Defense archives. Buried deep was a classified project, Echo Cradle, a failed attempt to weaponize psychic resonance by tuning into latent hybrid DNA. The program had been shut down after catastrophic neural feedback incidents, but someone had revived it. and they'd found Cyril's signature. Worse, Kalen had allied with them. Not out of malice this time, but desperation. In exile, he'd discovered ruins of the original Genesis project. Ones that spoke of a harmonic key capable of stabilizing dying stars. His homeworld, once lush, was now barren, its core cooling. He believed Cyril wasn't just a child. She was the key to saving his people. And he was willing to take her by force. "They don't understand," Lysara said, pacing the war room. Cyril strapped to her chest in a carrier woven with dampening threads. "Her power isn't a tool. It's tied to her emotions. If they try to extract it..." She couldn't finish. Joran stared at the star map glowing above the table. Kalen's fleet was moving again, this time toward Xylos 9, where the Echo Cradle facility lay hidden beneath asteroid ice. They weren't coming for war. They were coming for a miracle. "We have to get there first," Joran said. "But the Spire is safe. The clans are loyal. The people believe in you." He took her hands. "But our daughter? She's not just a Veari heir. She's ours. And no one gets to decide her fate but us." They left under cover of a solar flare, aboard the Whisperwing, a stealth cruiser retrofitted with both Veari cloaking tech and human AI navigation. Joran piloted. Lysara monitored Cyril's biosigns, which spiked erratically the closer they got to Xylos 9. The facility was a nightmare of steel and ice, humming with stolen Veari resonance coils. Inside, scientists, human and rogue Veari, worked feverishly around a central chamber where a massive tuning fork pulsed with stolen energy. At its heart floated a containment sphere, already resonating with Cyril's frequency, drawn across light years like a beacon. Kalen stood before it, gaunt but resolute. "You don't understand what's at stake," he said when they confronted him in the control room. "My world is dying. Millions will perish. Your child can save them without harm. The cradle only needs her echo, not her body. And if it goes wrong?" Joran shot back. "If it shatters her mind like it did those test subjects?" Kalen's jaw tightened. "Then I'll carry that guilt forever. But I won't let my people die in silence." Before anyone could act, Cyril let out a wail. Not of fear, but of recognition. The containment sphere flared. The walls groaned. Reality itself seemed to thin. And then, impossibly, the tuning fork answered. Light erupted, not destructive, but clarifying. Images flooded the chamber. Visions of the past, the future, the countless lives hanging in the balance. Joran saw Earth burning. Lysara saw her brother as a boy, laughing in a garden long gone. Kalen saw his people, not starving, but singing beneath reborn stars. And in the center of it all, Cyril floated from her carrier, suspended in golden light, eyes wide open, calm. She wasn't being used. She was choosing. With a gesture too small to be deliberate yet too precise to be chance, she reached toward the tuning fork and tuned it. Not to extract power, but to harmonize. The facility's chaotic energy stabilized. The resonance spread outward, not as a weapon, but as a wave, gentle, healing, carrying the imprint of her dual soul. Across the galaxy, dormant terraforming nodes activated. Barren worlds began to green. On Kalen's dying planet, the core stirred, warmth returning like a remembered dream. Silence fell. Kalen dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "She didn't just save them," he whispered. "She forgave me." In the aftermath, everything changed. Kalen surrendered not as a prisoner but as a penitent. He returned to his people not as a warlord, but as a guardian of the new harmony. The Echo Cradle was dismantled, its knowledge sealed under joint Veari-human oversight. And Cyril? She became more than a princess. She became a symbol, the first true bridge between species, not by decree, but by nature. Back at the Spire, life settled into a new kind of normal. Joran still walked the halls, though now with a tiny hand in his. Cyril, barely walking, would point at murals and babble in a language that mixed standard Veari and something entirely her own. Lysara ruled with renewed strength, her policies now shaped by hope rather than survival. One evening, as the three of them sat on the sky balcony watching the twin suns dip below the horizon, Cyril reached up and touched Joran's scar, the one from the assassin's bolt. Her fingers glowed faintly, and for the first time in years, the pain vanished completely. Lysara smiled. "She's healing more than wounds." Joran kissed the top of his daughter's head, breathing in the scent of stardust and baby soap. "She's healing us all." And far above, in the silent vault where the casket of Vathel rested, its silver veins pulsed once, softly, contentedly, before falling still. The The story wasn't over. It never would be. But for now, in this quiet moment, guarded by love and lit by starlight, it was enough. Years flowed like starlight through the halls of the celestial spire, and Joran and Lasara's love only deepened with time. Cyril was not their only child. She was merely the first of 5. 3 daughters and 2 sons followed, each a unique blend of human resilience and Veari grace. Their laughter echoing through gardens that now bloomed with earth roses and moon blossoms side by side. The children played in courtyards where human toys mingled with levitating Veari puzzles, spoke in a language all their own, and never once questioned whether they belonged. They simply were, whole and loved. Joran never became king, nor did he wish to. He remained Lord Protector, though his duties grew gentler as peace took root. He taught his sons how to throw a baseball and his daughters how to disarm a plasma trap with nothing but a hairpin and calm nerves. Lasara, meanwhile, reformed the High Conclave into a council of shared voices, human, Veari, and even representatives from former enemy worlds. The casket of Vathul was placed in a public museum, its legend no longer a mystery but a testament to trust over tradition. Kalen returned often, not as a prince, but as an uncle. He brought his people's children to play with Cyril and her siblings, and slowly, the old wounds between their branches of the royal line healed. The bridge gene, once feared, became a symbol of unity, studied not for power, but for understanding. No one tried to weaponize it again. They had seen what true harmony looked like. A human man holding his alien queen's hand as their children chased fireflies made of living light. In their later years, Joran's hair turned silver, and Lasara's glow softened, but their bond never dimmed. They walked the palace gardens every evening, sometimes silent, sometimes reminiscing about the box, the battle, the birth of their first cry under violet skies. Their home was filled with noise, arguments over homework, debates about interstellar cuisine, the joyful chaos of family dinners where earth stew simmered beside Veari crystal broth. When their grandchildren came, 10 in all, from unions across species and stars, the spire welcomed them with open arms. Joran taught them earth lullabies. Lasara showed them how to listen to the whispers of ancient stones. And on quiet nights, when the twin moons aligned just so, the whole family would gather on the sky balcony, hands clasped, hearts full. They had faced war, betrayal, and cosmic uncertainty. But in the end, it was kindness that won. Not swords, not treaties, but a guard who dared to open a box, and a queen who dared to hope. They lived not in grand legend, but in quiet joy, cooking together, arguing over star charts, falling asleep side by side, fingers intertwined. And when their time finally came, Joran first, then Lasara, decades later, they passed peacefully, surrounded by their children, their legacy not carved in stone, but woven into the fabric of a galaxy that had learned to love across difference. Their tomb was simple, beneath the garden they'd planted together, marked only by 2 names and a single phrase. We chose each other, and it was enough. Their children ruled wisely, their grandchildren dreamed boldly, and in every newborn's first cry, the universe remembered the day a human guard and a white-haired queen proved that love, not blood, makes a family.